Shluchin V'Shutfin Peirik Shmini. Now we learned that if someone wants to invest money with someone, in other words, there's an investor and there's the misasik, the person that's managing this investment. So if the deal is going to be that it's going to be mechza schar or mechza hefset, so it comes out that Ba'atzem, half of the money that he gave him was a halva, half of the money that he gave him was a pikodin, and that's why half of the schar or the hefset goes to the investor, and half of the schar and the hefset goes to the manager. And lefiza, it's going to come out that the reason why the manager is managing the investor's pikodin, there's the fact that he's managing his own halva, that's not a problem. But why is he managing the investor's pikodin? Is because he received the halva. So it comes out that it's an avak ribis. Because of the halva, that's why he's managing the investor's pikodin. Therefore, in order to take away that problem, so therefore he has to be compensated. He has to be compensated for working on the investor's pikodin, either by being given kapel bottle, or if he has other work anyways, so he can give him less. And if there's no arrangement made, so Chazal made an arrangement that the manager should get 2/3 of the schar, rather than getting half-half, he's going to get 2/3 of whatever profit is made. And on the other hand, if there'll be a loss, so he'll only suffer 1/3 of the loss, as opposed to a half of the loss. In other words, the investor will suffer 2/3 of the loss, and the manager will suffer 1/3 of the loss. That's what we learned in the last two prakim. Now, this din is when a person gives someone money to manage, to invest. Person gives someone metaltalim to go ahead and sell. We had yiriyas, we had chavias. A person is giving him things to sell. All these dinim apply when you give someone something for business. Al derech zeh, if you give someone something not for him to sell, but rather for him to develop. You give him eggs. This is a farmer. You're giving him eggs in order for him to have the eggs should develop into chickens. The farmer has chickens, so Mela, those chickens are going to sit on the eggs, and Mela, as through that they'll hatch and have chicks, and then the farmer will develop those chicks. They'll become chickens, and etc., etc. So in Mela, that's going to be business. So in other words, he's not selling it, but he's rather developing it. And again, if the deal is going to be machze schar and machze hefset, so it comes out that these eggs that he gave him were chotzi milva, chotzi pikodin. Chotzi milva, chotzi pikodin. Why is he working with the chotzi pikodin of the person that owns the eggs? The reason is because he lent him the other eggs. The other eggs, he has the chotzi milva. So because of the chotzi milva, that's why he's working on the chotzi pikodin. And al derech zeh, if he gives him a behema in order for him to develop the behema, to fatten up the behema. So again, if the deal is going to be that it's only machze schar and machze hefset, and there's not going to be any compensation to the person that's working with in developing the animal which the person gave him, so then it comes out again, it's a vakribus. So therefore he has to be compensated. And over here, when he's feeding the animal, so he has to be compensated aside for his work and aside for the food that he's feeding the animal. Again, that shouldn't be considered that it's ribus. He's giving something to the investor because of the fact that the investor gave him a loan. What's the loan? That he's able to profit from those eggs, half of the profit, or from those behemoths, as we'll learn Behemshach. Peirik Shmini. Hanoisen beitzim lebala tarnegel. Someone gives eggs to someone that owns chickens, and the purpose is lohoishev atarnegelim aleim achi yetzu efrechem. So for these chickens to cause these eggs to hatch, v'gad leisem bala tarnegelim, and then those chicks that'll come out of those eggs. So the bala tarnegel, the one that owns the chickens, he will grow he will hold onto those chickens. He will megadol them, and v'yeh harevach b'neiim, and they'll split the profit. Is tzarich lahalis leschar amoli mazeni. So this person that gave him the eggs has to give the person the farmer knows, the person that has the chickens, is going to cause those eggs to have chickens. He has to pay for him sai schar amoli, for the work that he's doing in causing these eggs to hatch, and also the mezayne, the food that he's going to be giving, eventually his chicken anyways he has to feed, but eventually he's going to feed those chicks that are going to hatch, and he's going to develop them, so he has to also be compensated for that food that he's going to be giving them. Because if he's not being compensated, so why is he giving his money to develop that other person's, which is halfway the other person's chicks? Because he's being lent the other chicks. So knows This is all to avoid saying that the reason why he's working on the chotzi pikodin, which is the chotzi that the Baal HaBeitzim, the one that has the Baal HaMois, the one that gave these eggs, has, is in order to avoid that he shouldn't be considered that it's ribis, so he has to be compensated. The same thing would be Hashom Agolim Musyochim Al Horeya Lies Misasig Bem Achi Agdilu. So again, he has calves, he has young donkeys that he wants to give to a reya, to a shepherd, and he's going to deal with them until they develop. And vaschar lemtza, so in other words, there's a certain price that they're worth right now. Then there's going to be a certain price that they're going to be worth eventually when he's going to take them back. And the difference with that price, they'll divide. In other words, he invested into it, so obviously he's going to get his keren back. And whatever the schar is, whatever it went up in value, that they will divide. So again, chayiv lahalis l'schar amoli. So he has to give he can't just make such a deal and it'll be 50-50. He has to, first of all, pay schar amoli. He has to give the shepherd schar for doing this work, and also mezene b'chol yom, and also the food that these behemoths need, kepel bottle, umegadleisam, and this shepherd goes ahead and he raises them. So the normal deal is that he raises them until the calf is going to be 3 years old, or vachamer, and the donkey until it's going to be able to already carry a load. So in other words, the question is, when could they split? So that at that point in time it's split. So there's two dinim over here. First of all, the din is that he has to be, in other words, that they make a deal that is going to be 50-50. So he has to also compensate him for his work and also for the food that he's feeding him. And also that he has to hold it, in other words, he holds it onto it until it becomes either by the calf 3 years old, or by the chamer until it's able to carry a load. None of them could go ahead and sell this item without the das chaver. Since he gave it to the person to raise it, so they both have investment, so to speak, in it, and therefore it can't be sold unless they both agree. So that's two cases. We had a case where you give eggs to a farmer to cause them to hatch, and al derazeh you gave calves or young donkeys in order for them to grow, to raise them, in order for them to be already larger animals. V'chein hasham behema ala mafatim. You have a behema, not a small behema, you can have already a bigger behema, and you give it to someone that fattens it up. He fattens it up. It's a mafatim. Lias mafatim esa. He fattens up the animal, and again vaschacher leamtza. And whatever knows the animal is worth a certain amount of money. After it'll be fattened up for a while, it'll be worth more money, and that whatever goes up in value, that's what they divide between themselves. And vasacher lemtza is again tzarich litin amole kepel bottle. He has to pay him. He has to pay him for his work, kepel bottle. That's the deal. V'im omerle hari areish va'al yishulcha ba'molcha yeser amachtzes aschar. Whereas we're going to split the profit, but besides that, you'll have the head. And it says here vo'alya, but it's lav dafka vo'alya. It's to be oya alya. And some gears is oya alya. V'mamali hari areish va'alya shulcha ba'melcha yeser amachtzes aschar. That's also mutter. That's also mutter, because that's considered that he's paying him, he's compensating him for being mafatim, and memela the rest of the schar could be l'be'amtza. Again, the concern is that this person shouldn't be working and doing things for the for the investor, for the one that owns this behema, and he's working on his pikodin part, and the only reason why he's working on it is because he's lending him the other part. Now, he had other behemoths. This wasn't the only behemoth that he was fattening up. He had other behemoths that he was fattening up. And he had other calves, other young donkeys, he had other eggs that he was developing with his chickens. Since he's not only working for for this person that gave him the eggs, or this person that gave him this behemoth to fatten, or this person that gave him the calf or the young donkey to develop. Which is also what we learned earlier, that when he has the other geschäft, so then if he doesn't have other geschäften, so he has to pay him kapel bottle. But if he has other geschäften, so then he could pay him even less. And then they could divide the schar equally. If besides that he was also a sharecropper of the person that owns the eggs or owns the behemoth, is hail v'metapel b'shalei u'b'shabal hasadis. Knows he's sayak sharecropper, and he has other things. Knows it's not. There's three madregas. There's a madrega where you have to pay him kapel bottle. You have to give him schar amoli. That's one madrega. Then you have another madrega where you don't have to give him schar amoli, because since he's doing things of his own as well, so even if you give him a minimal amount, that's also enough. That's also enough. And then there's a madrega that he has things of his own, and besides that, he's also an oris of this person that gave him the behemoth, or gave him the eggs, or gave him, so notice he's bechlal, he's meshubah to that person. So memela v'm hoyarise is hail v'metapel b'shalei u'b'shabal hasadis. So memela ain't tzarich lahalis liklum. So then he doesn't have to pay him anything. And even if he doesn't pay him anything, it's also not considered ribus. Now we learned earlier from the Kesef Mishnah that this idea that there's a minimum how much you have to give for compensation is only if you want to give compensation at the end. Masha'enkin, if you make up a deal originally, when the deal is you make up a certain deal of compensation, so then there is no minimal amount. That was the Shittas Harambam with the case where he's with the 10th and the 9th, that he's only, in other words, he's gaining a 9th and he's losing a 10th. So and others held that that's not enough. But the Rambam held it's enough, and we learned from the Kesef Mishnah that when is that enough? When you make up in the beginning. Masha'enkin, if you make up later, so then it's different. So the same Kesef Mishnah would be over here. This whole din that there has to be a minimal amount that you're giving compensation is only when, and there's a certain amount. There's a shear, if it's charamole, or so that's only if you're making up at the end. Masha'enkin, if you made up in the beginning, so make up in the beginning, you can make up any upmach you want to make. Halacha beis. Hasham agolim esayochim eishiv tarnegelim esham behema lapatim lemachtes schar. They did this what we spoke about in Halacha Aleph. Whereas he gave him eggs, or he gave him agolim esayochim, or he gave him a behema lefatim, and they made up lemachtes schar. It's going to be half. That it's going to be half. And lepeil v'lei halal ischar, he's not compensating him anything for his work. In other words, there was no upmach that he's going to compensate him for his work. So just like we learned before, b'negei money, if you have money, you give money to someone to work with the money, to the manager of the money, and you didn't make any deal with him. So the din is that a third that he gets, the manager gets 2/3 of the profit, and he only suffers 1/3 of the loss. So that would apply here. It's the same thing. That's the same exact din, the same din that we had by the money or by the items that you give. The same din over here. Let's read again. Hasham agolim isayochim. That's one case. Eheshev tarnegolim. That's the case of the eggs. Esham behema lapatim. When he gave it the behema to fatten up, and the deal was lemachtes schar. That was the deal. That he's going to give half of the schar. Uvulei halal schar. So the din is harei dinei. Kedina esik shalmois. Rein become shaman abehemus ehabeitzim v'kamer revichul. They take a look how much was the shuma, and v'netel hamisasik shnei shlishi aschar. Lepel he gets 2/3 of the schar. They mifsidu mishalim shlisha hefset. So and if they make up, so then it's mishalim shlisha hefset. Now the ma'aseh is that the Rambam says over here, the tzir of the Rambam, the way he says it is that they made up about the schar. Now we learned earlier, the Mefarshim explained that it's not meduyik in the Rambam. He means that they made up lemachtzis haschar and lemachtzis hefsid. Whereas if they taka made up clearly lemachtzis haschar, so then the hefsid only tzad hefsid, the manager gets 1/3 of the hefsid, and the investor takes 2/3 of the hefsid. If they made up only about the hefsid, so then it works on the schar. If they didn't make up anything, or they made up that both of them are going to be lamachtzis, so then the din is that it works both ways. So that side, the investor gets the manager gets 2/3 of the schar, inside that the manager only loses 1/3 of the hefsid. So over here he's saying that royin become a shaman abehemis. How much was it originally worth? And become a revichu, and how much did they did they earn? And v'neitla misasik shnei shlishi aschar, they mifsida misham shlisha hefsid. So it's working both ways. When does it work both ways? When the deal originally was both ways. When the deal originally was, there was no deal at all. So then this works both ways. Or lechatchila, the deal was that they're going to get both the same amount, and that can't be. So Chazal instituted that it should work, that he should add a third to his either a third to his profit or lose a third from his loss. Halacha Gimel. Shaman par v'chamer v'chol dover shedarki lasis v'lechel v'yi aschar lemtza. So all the dinner that we learned until now was talking about you gave someone something, and that person wasn't gaining anything from that item. In other words, he had to work with the item, he may had to feed the item, he had to feed the behemoth. So then, b'chiyai gavna, we're saying that you have to either compensate him with money, or if you don't make a deal to compensate with money, so then he'll get an extra third of the schar, as we learned just now. However, what happens if we're dealing with a cow, and that cow also works? He works. The cow could help plowing or whatever, or it gives milk. Ishaman para v'chamer v'chol davar shedarki lasis v'lechel, something that works. It's lases and v'lechel. It eats and it works. And v'yas schar lamsa. And then you can make up that the schar is lamsa. Or you give someone a cow. You say, listen, the cow is worth this and this amount now. I want you to hold on to this cow. And in a half a year from now, or whatever time, we'll take back the cow, and then we'll see what it's worth then. And if it's worth more, so then we'll split the profit, and if it's worth less, we'll split the loss. So over here, you don't have to compensate him. Why? Even though he was feeding the cow, because Lepel, he was using the cow also for work. Since the cow was by him, the cow could work. So therefore, he was the cow for work. So you can't say why that the only reason why he's working with the half of the pikadon is because of the fact that he's getting a half a milva. No, Lepel, he's working with the half of the pikadon because he's gaining from the half of the pikadon. Lepel, he's working with it, and Lepel, he's able to get money from it. That's this thing. Shaman para v'chamer v'choldav darke lases v'lechel. And via schar lemtza, and they split the profit. Aval b'shezem misasik, but nevertheless, revach acher la'atzmei b'avedas habehemis. He has another profit from the work of the behemoth. Shari seicher esa, he could rent out his behemoth, or yevid boy, he could himself work with the behemoth. V'nana b'schara b'avidasa, he nana either with the rent that he takes for the behemoth, or with the work that the behemoth does for it. Now, what happens if he has a cow and he also has a calf? And he gave him a cow and a calf together. So for the cow, you don't have to really compensate him. But the calf, the question is, do you have to compensate it for the calf? Or could you make it like one deal? You say, since the calf anyways is going to whole time go with the cow, so it's really not so much work. And there's a svara also that the calf also, so you could use the waste of the calf for manure, and Mamela, that'll, so to speak, cover the cost of to pay you for what you're developing the calf. So the din is not like that. It's machlekes in Mishnah. The ein shaman egel imime. You can't assess the calf together with its mother, and also v'lei sayach in imime, a baby donkey with its mother. She'egel v'asayach ein eseklum, and v'yesh be'esek. Lepel, there is work to deal with this calf, and there is work to deal with this baby donkey. So for the baby donkey, he has to be compensated. So in other words, when you give someone a cow plus a calf, or you give someone a donkey, which could carry and work together with a baby donkey, so for the cow and for the donkey, you don't have to compensate him, because Lepel, the work that he's going to get out of it, that's his compensation. But for the calf or for the baby donkey, he has to be compensated. Halacha dalet. Hasham behema lechaveri ad masil chayiv letapel. Someone assessed a behema lechaveri. There was the case, halacha gimel, that someone gave someone a behema, and the question is, what is the deal? Ad masil chayiv letapel. So in other words, we had before, you gave him an egel, so until he becomes 3 years old. When you give him a sayach until he's able to carry. Mashengrov, we talking about a behema, full-grown behema. And the purpose is that the behemoth is going to develop and is going to become fatter and is going to become worth more. Is Hasham behema lechaveri ad masa chayiv letapelba is ba'asenis. If you're talking about a donkey, so then it's shmeina asur chedesh. This minastam, we assume that he gave it to him for 18 months. Ubegoidres, if we're talking about the other animals, walking animals, vehenatsein v'habokar, so they are arboim ve'esrim chedesh. We assume that he gave it to him for 24 months. So in other words, when a person gives someone an animal, and the purpose is that it should develop, this shepherd is going to raise these animals, and they will develop, and they'll become worth more, and then they'll split the profit. So the question is, how long do we assume the deal was for? So we assume the deal was for either 18 months when we're talking about asenis, and if we're talking about goydus, which is the seino bakar, so we assume it's 24 months. And if the original owner comes along and says, no, I want to split, I want to take it back, is chaveri ma'akev. The person that's working could stop him. Why? Because since they stop the stam, why? What's the seichel of this amount of time? So the Rambam is l'fisheina dema tefila shel shana rishena shehi meruba v'harevach muet she'eina mishtamenes betchila ela b'keishi l'tefila shel shana acheres shehi muetes and v'harevach meruba sharei hi mishtamenes harbe u'misefes b'chol yem l'fichach ma'akev olav at seif shana shniya. So in other words, when a person gives someone a behemoth to develop the behemoth, to raise this behemoth, and the behemoth will become fat, so the Seder Advarim is that in the first year, it only becomes fat a little. Mashaik, in the second year, it fattens up more. So now, if the owner is going to come to the behemoth, to the person that's raising the behemoth, after a year, and say, now let's take it back, and let's assess it. So it'll come out that he did a lot of work, because in the first year, there's a lot of work, and there's little profit. The ikar profit will be in the second year, and at the end of the second year, and the second year is going to be less profit. So therefore, when this person takes this animal to raise in this cheshbon zazeh, I'm going to have to raise it for 2 years. So in the first year I'll have to work hard, and the second year not so hard, and eventually after the second year it'll be profitable. But Lepel is going to end up, you're going to take him away the first year. After the first year, he ended up working hard with little profit. That wasn't the deal. That's the pashtus, not the deal. In other words, no one spelled it out. But the pashtus, that's not the deal. So therefore, the pashtus is that a person doesn't want to take an animal if it's not going to be for 2 years. So therefore, so that's the din, that you can't take the animal back before the end of 2 years. That's the din, or the end of 18 months. Lefikcha ma'akev olav ad seif shana shniya. Now this really explains why the owner can't go ahead and take it back. It doesn't really explain why the person that's developing, the one that's raising the animal, the shepherd, can pull back. Because l'chura fakert, it's an advantage for the person that he's raising to. So also, minastam, a person, normally, it's easier for him to find someone, a shepherd, that's a 2-year job. Mashayin can find a shepherd on 1-year job, even though Lepel is going to be more profitable, because Lepel, the second year, there's less work, and there's also less work, and there's more profit. But nevertheless, normally people don't find so easily someone that's going to do something for 1 year. So therefore, huadin, that the person, the shepherd, can also have charot. Okay. Then the Ram continues. Now, yolda habehema hashum etzli. So someone gave a person a behema to develop, and the purpose of the development means that the behema shall become worth more in value. And Lepel, while the behema was lying was found itself by this shepherd, so the behema gave birth. Yolda habehema hashum etzli. So harei havlad mikal harevach leemtza. So that's part of the profit. The vlad is part of the profit, so they're going to split the profit. So they'll also split the vlad. Now the question is, who has to raise this vlad? Is mokim shenagu legadol vlodi seyam? Is he gadol? If part of the job, in other words, this kilo, part of the deal, that I'm giving you an animal, you're going to raise this animal, let's say, for the next 2 years, and also if this animal, and whatever profit it'll be, whatever it'll increase in its value, we'll split the increase in the value. And if there'll be a vlad, so we'll split the vlad. But also part of the deal is that if there'll be a vlad, you'll be megadol the vlad as well. So memela mokim shenagu legadol vladesam, that this shepherd is going to be megadol the vlad, is yigadol. So he shows. So that's part of the deal, that has to be megadol the vlad. V'achar kach yimachru, and only then will it be sold together with everything else. And then at that point in time, they'll split the profits. However, mokim shenago shalei legadol, in a place where the minig is that it's not legadol, so there was a vlad, and this vlad is 50-50 taka, but lepel, it's not the chiyuv of the shepherd to stop being megadol, the vlad as well. He only accepted upon himself for the original animal. Is mokim shenago shalei legadol, is chayiv hamisasik litapel b'vladas. So the misasik still has to do something with the vlad. He can't just right away the first day give it back to the investor, to the person that gave him the animal. Bedaka, if it's a small animal, so he takes shleishim yem. Ubegasa, the large animals, is chamishim yem. And then v'chilkim, so he gives it back to him. And then they divide whatever its value is. At that point in time, he's finished. As far as the vlad is concerned, he's finished. However, rotzoli tapul bem yasal's manzeh, the minig is that he could really give it back. So he could have given it back after 30 days. He could have given it back after 50 days. But let's say he was willing to be matapel, this shepherd, this person, the misasik, was willing to deal with it longer. Isham eison b'fnei shleishim b'yem shleishim b'yem chamishim. So they go ahead and they assess the value of this vlad on the 30th day when we're talking about Tseino Bokar, or b'yem chamishim when we're talking about asenis. I'm sorry, when we're talking about behema gasa. And v'chol she'arvichu acharkach, and whatever will be. So we know already the value of what it's worth on the 30th day and on the 50th day. Now lepel, this value is a 50-50. This vlad is part of the profits, and he was mechuyev to hold it for 30 days and 50 days. So he held it for 30 days and 50 days. Whatever it's worth now, that's really the profit, and that's what they split. But he's going and continuing in raising this behemoth, which is half his and half the original owners of the behemoth that he originally got. Now lepel, so he's going ahead and he's going to continue raising this behemoth. So half of the behemoth is the mechatchila is. The other half, which he's raising, it's like he's raising the other person's behemoth, which the din is that he gets 50-50. So mele is going to come out. So whatever it's worth today, so that's the worth today, and that's 50-50. And then whatever is going to be developed, in other words, the profit, after what is valued today, they will split 75% and 25%. Because 50% is the mechatchila is, because half of it is his behemoth. And the other 50% is like he's taking a behemoth from the other person. When he takes a behemoth from the other person, they split it 50-50. That's what he's saying. V'chol she'yarvichu acharkach is yitla misasik shleish halochim and v'chaveri revia harevach. He will take 75% and the other will take 25%. Why? Because shariyesh le chatzi avlad. Anyways, chatzi avlad is his. Because he's also working on the other person's half, is neitel chatzi. He said chatzi, so he takes half of that half. Is haresh leisher revoim, so he ends up with 3/4. Now that's talking about if lepel he went ahead after 30 days and after 50 days, where really he had the right to return the animal. Instead of returning the animal, he went in front of 3 people and they made an assessment, and it was official that from now on he's working on it. But lepel, he's working on it. Half of it is already his, and the other half he's working on it is like a reya, which gets 50% of the other person's half. However, he didn't make this tonight b'fnei shleisha. He knows he just continued. He had the vlad was born while it was by the shepherd, and the shepherd kept on raising this vlad as well. Is harei mochal memela b'avlod is b'neim b'shava k'mei shehin. So the vlad is b'shava. So in other words, eventually when they're going to split, so they don't make any cheshbenis of how much was the vlad worth when it was 30 days or 50 days. They make the cheshbon, the vlad is part of the profit, and lepel 50-50. Whatever the vlad is worth, 50 goes to the original owner of the behemoth, and 50 goes to this shepherd. That's mokim shenoagu lahali schar katof lemoyis esek. So in other words, this person is working with the animals. He's working with the animals, with the eggs, or whatever he's working with. And lepel, there's delivering. In other words, you have to carry it. You have to carry things from one place to another place. So the question is, normally if you hire someone to carry it, so then you'd have to pay him. And where would that money come from? The money would come from both of them. Both of them would have to pay for whatever the deliveries would be involved. Now lepel, if this person, the actual misasik, the one that's the manager, he himself did the deliveries. He could have really hired someone else to do deliveries and pay them. Now he went ahead and did the deliveries himself. So now he wants to get paid. for his delivery. So obviously the half that he would have to pay, there's no point in him paying. Masha'ink, and the half that the delivery would come out from the money, from the original money, and that money would come out half from his side and half from the other side. So he wants that the half that the other person would have to pay to the delivery man should go to him. So that's his din. So in other words, when the regular thing is that you expect that there should be someone delivering and you should pay that delivery person, and you're not expecting the manager to do this delivering, is milim. So then you pay the delivery charges to the delivery expenses to the manager. And the year kol aschar shenetla misasik b'schar shenese al ksefei b'chlal saramois. Now the words schar anetla misasik b'schar shenetla al ksefei b'chlal saramois, not so clear what those words mean. But the pshat is that he, just like the schar amois, he gets 50%. So the same thing, the schar of the misasik, he also gets 50%. That's the year kol aschar shenetla misasik b'schar shenese al ksefei b'chlal schar amois. It should be similar to the schar amois, just like the schar amois. In other words, whatever money this money generates, he gets 50%. So al derech zeh, whatever charge there is for this for a kataf, which he did it himself, so he also gets 50%. Because lepel, I mean the 50%, the asik has to pay him. The part of his that the asik has to pay, I mean, what's the difference if he's like taking one pocket to another pocket? Mashenk in the part that the other person in the asik that has to pay him, so that he gets his 50%. V'chenim darken lahalis char behema. In other words, if his behema carried things, in other words, was transported through a behema, is also mailalei. Mokim shenagu lahalis char v'lodis b'schar amolei. So in other words, there's some places that they give the actual, in other words, we said before that if a Vlad was born, so then it's 50-50. But there are some places that when the shepherd is dealing with the animals, so they throw into the deal that if there'll be a Vlad, that Vlad is going to go to the shepherd. So that also goes with Makim shenagu lahalis schar v'lodis b'schar amolei, that the schar of the v'lodis also is part of the schar amolei. In other words, the v'lodis are his amolei. The lashon schar of v'lodis is not so meduyik, but l'chura it means that the v'lodis are being thrown in for the schar amolei mailim. V'chol ha'misasig ha'mishtatev stam le'yishanim miminig ha'medina. That's how the Rambam brings from the Bach. That's how he learns teaches these words. That mokim shenago lahalis schar v'lodis b'schar amolei means you're giving the v'lodis for the schar amolei, even though the words are not so clear that's what it means. And v'chol ha'misasig ha'mishtatev stam le'yishana miminig ha'medina. Halacha hey. Ruvain shehoisel isoda. Now this din, so we're learning over here dinim how there's magbil, how the deal should be. You can't have a deal of 50-50 because there'll be a problem of ribis. But medvar mamurim, when you give someone something, and that person is taking it, and the question is, part of it is a halva, part of it is a pikodin. So mainly it is diyunim whether or not how should be the deal. So it shouldn't be a shash of avak ribis. Mashenkin, if you give if there's a piece of karka and someone's working on your piece of karka, and that person is developing your piece of karka, so there's no agbolos, there's no halva here, there's no pikodin over here, it's your karka, that person is working for your karka, and you're making a deal. What should be his schar for working on your karka? So over there, it could be a chotzi, it could be whatever you want. That's his din. Halacha. Reuven shehoisel isod. Reuven owns a field. Veherit shimon l'teicha l'zara elenota. He brings shimon into the field to sow the field or to plant the field, trees, and that person will go ahead and spend money on the field, and it will sell the peiros. And whatever exceeds his expenses is yal b'neim. So he'll let's say invest $500 into the expense of the field, and lepel they will the field will yield $1,000. So memela $500 goes for the expenses, and the other $500 they split between them. Whether the expense, the profits will be divided equally. Whether Reuven, the owner of the field, will take more. Well, Reuven will pay for all of the expenses. Whether Shimon will pay for all of the expenses. Bechol ze mutter. All of this is mutter ein kan avak ribis. The whole musig of avak ribis is you give someone something, and that person becomes responsible for it, and that person like has this is a halva and this is a pikodin. Is past to say that there's a problem of ribis. Mashengen over here, he didn't give anyone anything. The field belongs to the original owner, and this person is going out and working on the field, and they have a deal for your work and for whatever you develop. What you're going to get for it. And v'shima metapel b'avedus oretz ubatzo mechiras haperes. This Shimon, which is getting involved in working on the field and he's selling the thing. He's also selling the peres. Umechiras haperes. He won nikra oretz. He's not called. He's a sharecropper. That is not the same deal like giving a person peres. If you give a person peres, so then you gave the person peres. That was halva and a pikodin. Mashenken over here, you didn't give him peres. You gave him a karka. And his job in this karka is to do this and this and this, and whatever you make up with him, that's what he's going to get for his job in the karka. See, even if part of the job is to sell the peiros, but still, it's not pshat he got the peiros. Who are nikra oris? That's it. So memela b'kitzur. So the first din over here in halacha hey is that all these dinim that we learned before was talking about by metaltal, when you give someone something and that person is going to develop it. So the question is, you have to avoid that there shouldn't be any avak ribis. Masha'enken, if someone is working on your karka, and whatever the deal is fine. Now, oris eimel machzor yiradati, ubal asoda eimel shlish yiradati. They have an argument how much the deal was, whether the oris says he was entitled to half of the payers, and the balasoda is saying you are only entitled to a third of the payers. So then hel chanach minig medina. So you go according to the minig, and v'zeh sheton shleika b'dinig oliv lahol raya. So he has to bring a raya. In other words, the pashas we assume that he was yorad k'minig medina, and if he's claiming that he wasn't yorad k'minig medina, so it's his obligation to bring a raya that he wasn't k'minig medina. Halacha vav Baal shehired arisim b'nichsei ishtei v'girsha. So the wife has nechasim, which is nichsei malug, and the Baal is entitled to the payers of the nichsei malug, and the Baal brought arisim sharecroppers to work on the nichsei ishtei. Now, so the din is if the Baal himself is an oris, and the Baal himself worked on nichsei ishtei, and then he divorced her before being nana from nichsei ishtei, he divorced her. So the din is that he's not entitled. He's only entitled to get either the hitzah if the shvach was if it was keneged the shvach. He can't get. It's yodel tachtena. The yodel tachtena means that he gets the very most how much he spent in order to do whatever he did, but only betnai that it increased in value. In other words, if he spent more than it increased in value, so then he only gets what it increased in value. Masha'enkin, if it increased in value more than he spent, so he doesn't get the increase in value. He only gets what he spent. So in other words, if the shvach is yeser al hitzah, so he only has the hitzah, and if the hitzah is yeser al shvach, he only has the shvach. That's this din of the Baal himself. Now here, he brought arisim down into the field. Now, the din is an oris, not him. He didn't work on the field. An oris worked on the field. Now the question is, do we look at this oris as being like an extension of him? And just like he would have been entitled only to the Hitzah, so they are also entitled to the Hitzah, because like a Yerid Shalei Bershus, that's the din. Or we say, no, listen, they're Arisim. And they were like Yerid Bershus. The Baal brought them down. They had a right to go there. And therefore, the wife is now Mechuyev to compensate these Arisim, like a normal Aris. Do we look at the Aris like a Yerid Shalei Bershus, or do we look at an Aris like a person that was Yerid Bershus as an Aris? Now the question is, Azay, if the Baal himself is not an oris, so really he's supposed to hire arisim. It's regular for him to go ahead and hire arisim. So when those arisim worked on this field, it was a normal thing. They hired arisim for the field, and since they hired arisim for the field, so even though right now, the Baal got divorced, they divorced his wife, but nevertheless, since this oris worked on the field, so the wife is mechuyev to compensate this oris for whatever is naturally is, whatever the deal was, what the regular deal of an oris is. Masha'enkin, if the husband was really capable of being an oris, he himself was an oris, so the wife wasn't really interested in arisim. The wife said, listen, the husband is an oris, let him do the oris. Elamai, the arisim came like instead of the husband doing the oris, so it's kilo, they're doing the work for the husband. So just like the husband, if he would have been the oris, he would have been only entitled to the Kedei Hitzos, al derez these arisim, which are coming b'mkeim abal, is also only entitled to aris. That's this din. Read again. Allah Chavov. Baal shahired arisim b'nichse yishti. A Baal brought down share crappers to his wife's nechosim, and lepel v'girsha, now he divorced her. Is that so? Im hoya Baal aris, if the Baal is aris, and memela, so the pashtas, the wife would have expected the husband to be the one to deal with the field. Is hail v'nestalku Baal nestalku heim. So they're only here became the Baal. The Baal is really the person that should be working on this field. Elamai, the Baal hired them to do his work, what he was supposed to do. So once he divorces her, so memela he's no longer shaykhs to this field. So once he divorces them, and since they're bimkoi moi, so hail v'nestalku Baal nestalku heim. And therefore, what are they entitled? In other words, what they spent, they could only get back. In other words, even if they spent money on it, but they can't even get back what they spent unless there's the shvach. In other words, if the shvach was kedei hitzah, so then they could get back all the hitzah. They can't get back the shvach. They could get back the hitzah, but only if the hitzah is if there's the sheer shvach kedei hitzah. Just like he wouldn't have been able to get anything other than the hitzah if there's a shvach kedei hitzah. That's talking about if the Baal was an Oris, so therefore she could claim that she's not interested in Arisim. She didn't need any Arisim, she had a Baal, which was an Oris. Elamai, the Baal hired these Arisim, so good, but now that this Baal is no longer a Baal, so Memele, the Arisim are no longer Arisim, and Memele, she has nothing to do with the Arisim. However, in a Baal Oris, if the Baal is not an Oris, so it was bepashtos that she needs Arisim, and the Baal went ahead and hired Arisim for her. The Meina Baal Oris is Aldas, meaning Ha'oris Yardu. So Melu, they came down. It's a normal din that they're coming and working for the field, and they're working for the field. They were hired by a person that's authorized to hire them because he was the husband. And Melu Vishamalem Karis, so they're entitled to be paid back like an Oris. Whereas if he wasn't an Oris, so in Mela, they're working for the field, so to speak, for her, so then she's obligated to pay them like an Oris. Masha'inkin, if he was an Oris, so Be'etzim, as far as she's concerned, she doesn't need Arisim. She has the husband. Elamai, they're working for him. So once he's no longer an Oris, so Mela, they're no longer Arisim. What are they entitled from her? They're entitled from her only to be compensated for the Hitzah, and only under condition that the Shvach is Kedei Hitzah. Halacha Zayin, Ha'achin Ishar HaYorshim, Shalicholku Yerushas Mirishim, so they inherited from their father, from their Moirish, together, and they never divided it. Elakula Mishtamshim B'miyachad, so the din is Harenka Shutfim L'chol Davar, they have a din of Shutfim, and since they're Shutfim, so they have the din of Shutfim. In other words, when Shutfim own something together, so there are din of what each one could use and what they can't use. In other words, even though each one's L'chur is a Yerush, so we can't say since he's a Yerush, he could do whatever, as Kila, he's the only Yerush. In other words, they're all Yarshim together, and since they're all Yarshim together, they're Shutfim together, and therefore each one is answerable to the other. Now, Echad Menachim Emin HaShutfim, Shenofel Umnas HaMelech. So over here it doesn't say, but in Hilchas Nachlis it says that the reason why he was Nofel Umnas HaMelech was because he was interested in helping the father. In other words, because they were this person was the son of their father, so therefore he took him as a worker, and he's paying him well. In other words, if he's doing something has nothing to do with everybody else, so the fact that they own shutfas together, the fact that they own the inheritance together, doesn't mean that if he got himself a very good job and he's getting paid very well, he has to divide it with all the other shutfim, or the other yarshim. We're talking about in a case where the reason why he got the job is because he's a yerish. In other words, he wanted to give the yarshim this job, he happened to give this person the job, or he wanted to give the shutfas this job, and mainly he gave this shutf the job. So that's Echad Menachem and Ashutfim Shenafel Umnas HaMelech. So then it's Harevach Lemtza. That's din number one. Now Chola Echad Mem, if one of them became ill, V'Nisrapi, is again Nisrapi B'Emtza. So now since they're together. So they're not only together as far as what they own together. They're together, considered like one company. So therefore, if one of them becomes ill, he could be healed from the estate. Now that's talking about if he became ill because he became ill. So that's not it. He was negligent, and as a result of his negligence, he became ill. Then he can't be misrapi mishalemtza from the estate. He has to be healed from his own money.